The £1,000,000 Note by Mark Twain. Read by Cliff Saunders. Part 3. I walked on air, and was happy to giddiness, to intoxication, you might say. And it was natural, for I had become one of the notorieties of the metropolis of the world, and it turned my head, not just a little, but a good deal. You could not take up a newspaper, English, Scottish, or Irish, without finding in it one or more references to the vest-pocket £1,000,000 and his latest doings and sayings. At first, in these mentions, I was at the bottom of the personal gossip column. Next, I was listed above the knights. Next, above the baronets, and next above the barons, and so on, climbing steadily until I reached the highest altitude possible. And there I remained, taking precedence of all dukes, not royal, and of all ecclesiastes, of course, except the primate of all England. But mind, this was not fame. As yet I had achieved only notoriety. Then came the climaxing stroke, the accolade, so to speak, which, in a single instance, transmuted the perishable dross of notoriety into the enduring gold of fame. Punch caricatured me. Yes, I was a made man now. My place was established. I might be joked about still, but reverently, not hilariously, not rudely. I could be smiled at, but not laughed at. The time for that had gone by. Punch pictured me all aflutter with rags, dickering with a beefeater for the Tower of London. Well, you can imagine how it was with a young fellow who had never been taken notice of before, and now all of a sudden couldn't say a thing that wasn't taken up and repeated everywhere. Couldn't stir abroad without constantly overhearing the remark flying from lip to lip, "There he goes, that's him." Couldn't take his breakfast without a crowd to look on, couldn't appear in an opera box without concentrating there the fire of 1,000 lorgnettes. Why, I just swam in the glory all day long, and that's the amount of it. You know, I even kept my old suit of rags, and every now and then appeared in them, so as to have the old pleasure of buying trifles and being insulted and then shooting the scoffer dead with a £1,000,000 bill. But I couldn't keep that up. The illustrated papers made the outfit so familiar that when I went in, I was at once recognized and followed by a crowd. And if I attempted a purchase, the man would offer me his whole shop on credit before I could pull my note on him. About the 10th day of my fame, I went to fulfill my duty to my flag by paying my respects to the American minister. He received me with the enthusiasm proper to my case, upbraided me for being so tardy in my duty, and said that there was only one way to get his forgiveness, and that was a dinner party that night made vacant by the illness of one of his guests. And I said I would, and we got to talking. It turned out that he and my father had been schoolmates in boyhood, Yale students together later, and always warm friends up to my father's death. So then he required me to put in at his house all the odd time I might have to spare, and I was very willing, of course. In fact, I was more than willing. I was glad. When the crash should come, he might somehow be able to save me from total destruction. I didn't know how, but he might think of a way, maybe. I couldn't venture to unbosom myself to him at this late date, a thing which I would have been quick to do in the beginning of this awful career of mine in London. No, I couldn't venture it now. I was in too deep, and that is too deep for me to be risking revelations to so new a friend, though not clear beyond my depth, as I looked at it. Because, you see, with all my borrowing, I was carefully keeping within my means, within my salary. Of course, I couldn't know what my salary was going to be, but I had a good enough basis for an estimate of the fact that if I won the bet, I was to have the choice of any situation in that rich old gentleman's gift, provided I was competent, and I should certainly prove confident. I hadn't any doubt about that. And as the bet, well, I wasn't worrying about that either. I'd always been lucky. Now, my estimate of the salary was £600 to £1,000 a year, say, 600 for the first year, and so on, up year by year, till I struck the upper figure by proved merit. At present, I was only in debt for my first year's salary. Everybody had been trying to lend me money, but I hadn't fought off the most of them on one pretext or another. So this indebtedness represented only £300 borrowed money. The other 300 represented my keep and my purchases. I believed my second year's salary would carry me through the rest of the month if I went on being cautious and economical, and I intended to look sharply out for that. My month ended, my employer back from his journey. I should be all right once more, for I should once more divide the 2 years' salary among my creditors by assignment and get right down to work. It was a lovely dinner party of 14. The Duke and Duchess of Shoreditch and their daughter, the Lady Anne Grace Eleanor Celeste, and so forth and so on, de Bourne, the Earl of Countess of Newgate, Viscount Cheapside, Lord and Lady Blatherskite, some untitled people of both sexes, the minister and his wife and daughter, and his daughter's visiting friend, an English girl of 22 named Portia Langham, whom I fell in love with in 2 seconds, and she with me. I could see it without glasses. There was still another guest, an American, but I'm getting a little ahead of my story. While the people were still in the drawing room, whetting up for appetite for dinner, and coldly inspecting the latecomers, the servant announced, "Mr. Lloyd Hastings." And the moment the usual civilities were over, Hastings caught sight of me and came straight with cordiality, outstretched hands. Then he stopped short, when about to shake, and said with embarrassed look, "I beg your pardon, sir. I thought I knew you." "Why, you do know me, old fellow." "No. Are you the vest pocket monster?" "I am, indeed. Don't be afraid to call me by my nickname. I'm used to it." Well, this is a surprise. Once or twice I've seen your own name coupled with a nickname, but it never occurred to me that you could be the Henry Adams referred to." "Why, it isn't 6 months since you were clerking away at Blake Hopkins in Frisco on a salary and sitting up nights on an extra allowance, helping me arrange and verify the Gould and Curry extension papers and statistics. The idea of you being in London and a vast millionaire and a colossal celebrity, why, it's the Arabian Nights come again. Man, I can't take it in at all, can't realize it. Give me time to settle the whirl in my head." "The fact is, Lloyd," I said, "you're no worse off than I am. I can't realize it myself." "Dear me, it is stunning now, isn't it? Why, it's just 3 months today that we went to the Miners' Restaurant." "No, the what cheer?" "Right, it was the what cheer. Went there at 2 a.m. and had a chop and coffee and had a hard 6 hours grind over those extension papers. And I tried to persuade you to come to London with me and offered to give you leave of absence for you and pay all your expenses and give you something over it if I succeeded in making the sale. And you would not listen to me, and I wouldn't succeed, and you couldn't afford to lose the run of business and be end of time getting the hang of things when you got back home. And yet, here you are. How odd it all is. How did it happen to you to come here? And whatever did you give to this incredible start?" "Oh, just an accident. It's a long story, and a romance, a body might say. I'll tell you all about it, but not now." "When?" "At the end of the month." "Well, that's more than a fortnight yet. It's too much of a strain on a person's curiosity. Make it a week." I can't, and you'll know why. But tell me, how's trade getting along?" His cheerfulness vanished like a breath, and he said with a sigh, "You are a true prophet, Hal." "Ah, true prophet, I wish I hadn't come. I don't want to talk about it. But you must. You must come and stop with me tonight when we leave here. Tell me all about it." "Oh, may I? Are you in earnest?" And the water showed in his eyes. "Yeah, I want to hear the whole story, every word." "Oh, I'm so grateful. Just to find a human interest once more in some voice and in some eye and in me and affairs of mine after what I've been through here. Lord, I could go down on my knees for it all." And then he gripped my hand hard and braced up and was all right and lively after that for the dinner, which didn't come off. No, the usual thing happened. The thing that is always happening under that vicious and aggravating English system. The matter of precedent couldn't be settled, and so there was no dinner. Englishmen always eat dinner before they go out to dinner because they know the risks they're running, but no one ever warns a stranger, and so he walks placidly into the trap. Of course, nobody was hurt this time because we all had been to dinner, none of us being novices except Hastings, and he having been informed by the minister of the time that who invited him that in deference to the English custom he had not provided any dinner. Everybody took a lady and processioned down the dining room because it's usual to go through the motions, but there's a dispute began. The Duke of Shoreditch wanted to take precedent and sit at the head of the table, holding that he outranked a minister who represented merely a nation and not a monarch. But I stood for my rights and refused to yield. In the gossip column, I ranked all dukes not royal and said so, and claimed precedent of this one. It couldn't be settled, of course, struggle as we might, and did, and finally, and injudiciously, trying to play birth in antiquity, and I seeing his conqueror and raising him with an Adam, whose direct posterity I was, and shown by my name, which he was of a collateral branch, is shown by his, and by his recent Norman origin, and so we all processioned back to the drawing room again, and had a perpendicular lunch, a plate of sardines and a strawberry, and you group yourselves and stand up and eat it. Here the religion of precedent is not so strenuous. The two persons of highest rank chuck up a shilling. The one that wins has first go at his strawberry, and the loser gets the shilling. The next two chuck up, and then the next two, and so on. After refreshment, tables were bought, and we all played cribbage, 6pence a game. The English never play any game for amusement. If they can't make something, or lose something, they don't care which. They won't play.